Broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. A couple of great guests today. We don't normally have a lot of guests. 2 is a lot for this show. The bottom of the hour, former Secretary of Defense twice, as a matter of fact, Donald Rumsfeld. And in our finer hour, the great Caroline Glick, expert on matters Israel, has a magnificent new book out. The timing is perfect given what Obama's trying to do over there. But before we get into all that, you know, the communists, particularly the Russians, can always rely on useful idiots in our own country, apologists, conspiracy kooks, to come to their defense while they trash our own country. And there are people in this country who believe 9/11 was an inside job and all that, who are the useful idiots. Now, I'm not saying we should be interventionist or isolationist. You can be rational about what's going on in the world and take each matter as it comes or each matter before it comes from a perspective of American preservation. And I talked about this last week at some great length, and I've written about it in Liberty and Tyranny. So this knee-jerk, emotional, loudmouth, buffoonish appeal on behalf of Putin, who is a murdering thug, a KGB hack, should be seen for what it is. And every generation, since the birth of communism, has had its useful idiots in this country. And they come in all forms, and they're on all platforms. Alger Hiss, perfect example. Very dangerous man. Liberals try and defend him to this day, but the evidence is unequivocal that he was a communist Stalin spy who was advising FDR. So Putin isn't to be admired. Putin is destroying what was the second Russian Revolution in modern times, brought on by the defeat of the Soviet Union, the raising of the Iron Curtain, thanks to Reagan and Thatcher and John Paul II and Helmut Kohl. So the useful idiots want us to ignore all of this and to ignore them. But you can look at history yourself, ladies and gentlemen. You can read history yourself. You have immediate access to it on the Internet. Those protesters in the Ukraine, broadly speaking, are freedom fighters. They're not neo-Nazis or Nazis. They saw their elected president was selling out his country to Putin. That's exactly what he was doing. Why would we characterize them as puppets, as Nazis and neo-Nazis? That's another tactic that goes back to Stalin. Russia has this propaganda operations that it uses all over the world, that it uses in its own country. And some of the useful idiots all over the world and in this country are swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. But luckily, they're in a very small minority, and they should be in a very small minority. I spoke at length yesterday about who Vladimir Putin really is. He should be denounced and rejected by everybody. Now, to denounce and reject Putin as the murdering former KGB thug who's destroying Russia and the liberties that came with the revolution, the most recent revolution, and the capitalist system, which is now really not even a capitalist system. It's an autocracy of sorts. Doesn't mean that we support what Barack Obama is doing in foreign policy. That's illogical. That's stupid. Barack Obama is unilaterally disarming this country as he had Georgia unilaterally disarm, as he had the Ukraine unilaterally disarm, as he seeks to have Poland and the Czech Republic unilaterally disarm, as he seeks to have Israel unilaterally disarm. He's a knucklehead. He's buffoonish. And he was hollowing out our military, and he's unraveling our country. And his budget today, $4 trillion monstrosity, more of this Marxist claptrap about redistributing wealth, the rich have too much. Folks, aren't you sick of this? We don't follow Marx in this country. We follow Adam Smith in this country. So somehow, to condemn a KGB murdering thug is to endorse Obama. No, it's to condemn them both. It's to condemn them both. Nazis and neo-Nazis were to believe. All the people of the Ukraine, they rise up. Many of them, even some of the Russian-speaking Ukrainians, they're worried about Russia. Because guess what? Russia is repressive. But, Mark, they voted for Vladimir Putin for president. Isn't that interesting? Well, you know, when he was voted for president, for what, the 12th time? I don't remember. Switching seats back and forth with Medvedev, his other hand puppet. There were all kinds of allegations of election fraud. I pulled up this New York Slimes piece from 2 years ago. A day after claiming an overwhelming victory in Russia's presidential election, Putin on Monday faced a range of challenges to his legitimacy, including charges of fraud from international observers and a defiant opposition that vowed to keep him from serving his full 6-year term. While Putin was still celebrating his win, he received a slap in the face from observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, while finding less of a ballot stuffing and other flagrant violations that had marred parliamentary elections in December. He owns the parliament, too. The observers said Putin had faced no real competition and unfairly benefited from lavish government spending on his behalf. You see, for some reason, people who want to challenge Putin wind up dead. They wind up in a gulag. They're poisoned. They're threatened. They're worried. This great Democrat, Vladimir Putin. It's amazing. I am neither an interventionist nor an isolationist. And while this term neoconservative it's a real term with a real definition, it's being used more and more by anti-Semites. More and more by anti-Semites who are too cowardly to say exactly what they mean and who they're talking about. Oh, that's true. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I wanted you to know, and there's a lot more to talk about today. Our good friend Vladimir Putin, who's just trying to uphold a democratically elected president in the Ukraine, as he did in Georgia, as he has in other parts of the former Soviet Union. Well, our good friend, apparently he filed a missile today, a ballistic missile. Russia said it had successfully test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile, with tensions high over its seizure of control in the Crimea and its threat to send more forces to its neighbor, Ukraine. You see, he does this because Obama's an idiot, because Obama has been unilaterally drawing down our own nuclear forces the way he has been unilaterally drawing down our conventional forces. And Putin sees it. The strategic rocket forces launched an RS-12M Topol missile from the southerly... Can anybody pronounce all these regions in Russia or around Russia? I can't. Astrakhan region. And the dummy warhead hit its target at a proving ground in Kazakhstan, Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Yegorov stated on state-run TV. Russia and the U.S. signed the latest of a series of treaties restricting the numbers of ICBMs in 2010, but Moscow has indicated it will agree to further cuts in the near future and is taking steps to upgrade its nuclear arsenal. Putin has emphasized Russia must maintain a strong nuclear deterrent, in part because of an anti-missile shield the U.S. is building in Europe, which Moscow says could undermine its security. An anti-missile shield that was supposed to already have been installed in Poland and in the Czech Republic. But yet again, Obama has talked those countries out of doing it. Obama's an appeaser. That's what he does. That's who he is. Except when it comes to some of our allies. Then he leans on them, particularly the most vulnerable among them. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I've had my disagreements with Governor Mitt Romney, but when he called out Russia as our number one geopolitical foe, he was right and he was wrong. Russia, China, there's so many, they're all up there, but Russia was certainly among them. But he was mocked. Mocked by Democrats and media types and Democrats. Well, it's incestuous, so you get the point. Here's a little montage from our friends from the Washington Free Beacon. Cut 8, go.
This is to Russia. This is, without question, our number one geopolitical foe.
After all, you don't call Russia our number one enemy unless you're still stuck in a Cold War mind warp.
Governor Romney is mired in a Cold War mindset. He acts like he thinks the Cold War is still on.
He's even blurted out the preposterous notion that Russia is our number one geopolitical foe.
It's somewhat dated to be looking backwards. The statements that Governor Romney makes show little understanding of what is actually going on in the 21st century.
It's a really curious statement given that the Cold War has been over for some time.
So
A throwback to the Cold War. We work with Russia all the time. He's not a dumb man, but he said something that was clearly dumb.
Is an antiquated worldview.
Is he trying to play Ronald Reagan here or what? What's he up to?
The 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
After revolution in Kiev, Russian tanks, choppers, and troops moved into Crimea.
These libs, are they right about anything? No. No, they're not right about anything. And they're dangerous. So there you have it. I have in front of me a op-ed from the president of Russia, Vladimir V. Putin, a.k.a. KGB, a.k.a. murder, a.k.a. all the rest of it. For the useful idiots out there who are promoting him and what he's doing and making excuses for it. And, by the way, in a few minutes, former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld will be here. And he says, in part, this is September 11, 2013, recent events surrounding Syria have prompted me to speak directly to the American people and their political leaders. It's important to do so at a time of insufficient communication between our societies. Relations between us have passed through different stages. We stood against each other during the Cold War, but we were also allies once and defeated the Nazis together. The Universal International Organization, the UN, was then established to prevent such devastation from ever happening again. The UN's founders understood that decisions affecting war and peace should happen only by consensus. And with America's consent, the veto by Security Council permanent members was enshrined in the United Nations Charter. The profound wisdom of this has underpinned the stability of international relations for decades. What a peacenik. No one wants the UN to suffer the fate of the League of Nations, which collapsed because it lacked real leverage. This is possible if influential countries bypass the UN and take military action without Security Council authorization. And it goes on. Our big peacenik, Putin, our big peacenik. But you see, he invaded the Crimea to save the Ukrainian people from a coup, to save the Russian-speaking Ukrainians from a coup, to protect them. That's what I'm there to protect them. But he didn't go to his wonderful UN now, did he? No, he didn't. And talking about Syria, he writes later on, from the outset, Russia has advocated peaceful dialogue, enabling Syrians to develop a compromise plan for their own future. We're not protecting the Syrian government, but international law, Putin wrote. We need to use the UN Security Council and believe that preserving law and order in today's complex and turbulent world is one of the few ways to keep international relations from sliding in the chaos. He sounds like Mashed Potato Face, a.k.a. John F. Kerry. The law is still the law, he writes, and we must follow it whether we like it or not. Under current international law, force is permitted only in self-defense or by the decision of the Security Council. Anything else is unacceptable under the UN Charter and would constitute an act of aggression. Oh, my goodness. It is alarming that military intervention in internal conflicts in foreign countries has become commonplace for the U.S. Wow, he sounds like some of the useful idiots in our own country. Is it in America's long-term interest? I doubt it. Millions around the world increasingly see America not as a model of democracy, but as relying solely on brute force, cobbling coalitions together under the slogan, you're either with us or against us. There you go, the jackass, the hypocrite, KGB hack. Those are his words. But that was then and this is now. I'll be right back with Secretary Donald Rumsfeld.
Mark Levin doesn't just read the news, he makes the news. Call the Mark Levin Show now at 877-381-3811.
Donald Rumsfeld was U.S. Ambassador to NATO from 1973 to 74, and he was the 13th and 21st U.S. Secretary of Defense. Mr. Secretary, how are you, sir?
Well, just fine, thank you.
I know you have laryngitis, so we're going to make this...
I've kind of lost my voice, but I'll do my best.
Well, even with your lost voice, you make a lot more sense than most people. Now, I have looked at your March 28, 2008 op-ed, NATO expansion should continue. And if I may, just for a moment, I want to read two short paragraphs out of your op-ed, and then I want you to comment on what's happened today. And you wrote, with respect to Georgia and Ukraine, both nations are democratic, politically mature, relatively stable, and committed to the international community after the Orange and Rose revolutions in 03 and 04. Neighboring Russia recently suggested it might turn its nuclear arsenal in Ukraine or incite civil disorder in Georgia if either takes steps to join NATO. Undeterred, you wrote, the Georgian and Ukrainian governments have expressed their clear desire to initiate membership action plan proceedings. Silence on the issue of Georgia and Ukraine in Budapest, including postponement of maps. What are maps?
This is the process, the procedures that a country would go through to develop first a closer relationship with NATO and eventually membership.
All right. As some Western European governments seem to be suggesting, would amount to a rejection of Georgia's and Ukraine's international aspirations. It would prove disillusioning to their people, and it would serve as a green light to Russia to continue the tired rhetoric of the Cold War. Seems to me you are explaining right here, let us embrace these free countries, relatively newly free countries. They want to be in the Western sphere, and we didn't do it.
You're exactly right, and we know what happened in Georgia. Eventually the Russians went in and occupied a chunk of the Republic of Georgia, and now we see the same things happening in Ukraine. So it is a pattern that should not have been a surprise. It's terribly disappointing. Ukraine is an enormously important country in that part of the world, and I listened to the debate on all of this, and it sounds to me it's too narrow. Everyone's saying, well, okay, but what would you do now? And the short answer is that at any given moment, your options are, if you drive yourself into a cul-de-sac, your options are few. And think back. It was Benghazi in Syria. Now, yesterday it was Syria, supposedly, 140,000 dead. Today it's Ukraine. Tomorrow it could be Central Asia. It could be the Republic of Georgia again. It could be Iran or North Korea activity, or the behavior of the People's Republic of China in the South China Sea. The real problem is fundamental, and it's bigger, and it's critically important, and that's American weakness. It's that the United States of America is behaving as though we are in decline, and that we will not be a reliable ally, and we've, in effect, injected an instability into the world equation. We've created a leadership vacuum, and it's being filled by the Putins of the world, people without our values, very different view of the world, and interests that are fundamentally against our interests and the interests of our allies. So the immediate task, it seems to me, is to recognize that serious problem.
Well, what is our foreign policy? For the life of me, I can't figure it out.
Well, you don't have one. You have people who are reacting and leading, just from the hip. What has to be done, to provide leadership, you've got to have clarity of vision. You have to know what it is you think is important to be done. In this case, it seems to me what's important is for the United States to decide what are the political, economic, and security actions that can be taken that will provide an appropriate deterrent to the kind of behavior that Putin is engaging in, and quite honestly, that other countries will be encouraged to engage in, because we've created this leadership vacuum. Once we develop a set of these things we think should be done, in short, a mission, then the strategy is to go around and develop a coalition to support that strategy. This chattering about the international community is mindless. There is no international community. We're a whole range, 100-plus nations with different views, different neighbors, different histories, different cultures. The UN is not going to act with Russia having a veto. The Western European countries were the ones, particularly Germany, that were against making closer relationships with Georgia and Ukraine because they didn't want to upset Russia. But what we need to do is recognize that the mission has to determine the coalition. The coalition cannot determine the mission, or it's dumbed down to the lowest common denominator. And if you think the UN or some so-called international community, I think the Secretary of State and the President said, we stand with the international community. Well, that's like having both your feet firmly planted in midair. Mm-hmm. The international community does not have a strategy. It does not have a mission. And its leadership requires that we provide that, and then we get countries who will support that mission.
Now, Secretary Rumsfeld, what is your take on John Kerry? I mean, he's going around giving speeches and drawing lines everywhere while they're hollowing out the military. I mean, is this not a disaster?
Well, I don't know. I think I'd kind of rank him above his predecessor, who I can't think of a single thing that was accomplished. A trained ape can get a status of forces agreement, and we don't have one in Iraq, and we don't have one in Afghanistan. I don't know. We have 125 around the world, but we don't have one in either of those important countries where we've invested so much. He's knowledgeable. He has a set of relationships. Now, is he philosophically approaching it the way I've just described? No.
But what do you think Putin views him as kind of my words, not yours, as an airbag, as a gas bag?
I don't know. Putin, I think probably doesn't pay a lot of attention. He certainly didn't to the Hillary Clinton's reset button, which is obviously a joke. Yeah. I think that he doesn't really think about the secretaries of state. I think he thinks about the president, and he has seen a pattern of behavior that has been demonstrated basically by a lack of clarity of vision, a lack of purposefulness, a lack of resolve, and a lack of strategic vision. And the fact that Hillary Clinton or John Kerry or whoever else might be in those offices at the present time, I don't know that Putin pays much attention to it.
Secretary of Defense, you see what's happening to the Defense Department. You're concerned about this, I take it.
Well, I am. I think what we've done is the United States, the behavior, the gross mismanagement of our economy, modeling our economy after Europe, which is a failed model, demonstrating that by our debt and our deficits, that we're not going to be the factor in the future over the next 5, 10, 15 years that we've been in the past, because we're incapable of managing our economic affairs in anything other than a juvenile manner. When I went to Washington in 1957 out of the Navy, Eisenhower was president. He understood peace through strength. He understood that if you want to avoid war, you should and you want peace, you should have strength and capability and be prepared for war. And we were spending 10% of our gross domestic product on defense, thanks to Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. Today we're spending less than 4%. Our allies are spending less than 2%. So not only are we mismanaging our economy, we're withdrawing our capabilities. And the deterrent effect is what you're looking for. No one wants to be engaged in war or have to use war-fighting capabilities. But by golly, you have to have deterrence. And to the extent you are weak, weakness is provocative. It invites people to do things they otherwise wouldn't even think of doing. And we are inviting people to misbehave. We're inviting people to behave in aggressive ways. And the effect of it is to our great danger and to our friends and allies' danger.
So what do you think happens now? I mean, they're talking about the G8 and these other things, some economic pressure on Putin, but, I'm guessing Putin figures, all right, we'll have to put up with some misery for a year or two, but meanwhile, look what I've gotten.
Well, sure. I mean, when he invaded the Republic of Georgia, people fussed for a little while. He doesn't, you're not going to get steadiness of purpose and resolve and perseverance without leadership. You're not going to get leadership without clarity of vision. You're not going to be able to fashion a coalition. No country, including the United States, is capable of imposing by itself political, economic, and security actions that are sufficient to deter a Putin. What we have to do is design a mission and include a range of these things, and then get other countries to be supportive. And that isn't easy. I mean, if you think about it, think what President Obama did with respect to Syria. He made a statement, said that drew a red line, went around to other countries, and they laughed at him and didn't want to participate. Then he went to our Congress, and they wouldn't participate. So his leadership record is non-existent in foreign affairs, Nobel Prize or not.
Well, I'm sure he'll be up for another one quite soon. Now, Secretary Rumsfeld, I can tell your voice is strained. I know you have other interviews. I want to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate what you do for the country.
Well, thank you, and God bless you. And you take care. Great wisdom there. by Donald Rumsfeld, who served under several presidents. But, of course, he'll be trashed as a neocon and interventionist. He's none of those things. He's a patriot. He believes in his country. And he made quite clear what he thinks of this administration and its foreign policy and its defense policies. And they are. They're hollowing out our defense. We have no foreign policy unless appeasement is considered a foreign policy. And no, we don't want war. We want peace. I read to you from George Washington last week. And he made the point, which is really the only rational point on this, that your enemies have to fear you. They can respect you, but they have to fear you. And the way they fear you is if they fear your strength. See, folks, I don't believe America is militaristic, imperial, colonialist. I don't believe any of that crap. Obama does, and Putin does. I believe we've had some very poor presidents, some very poor commanders-in-chief. But that's not a reflection of you, the people in this audience or in the rest of this country. Patriotic, civil, law-abiding, tax-paying Americans. You don't want anything from anybody. Not your fellow citizens, not people abroad. And many of your families, if not you as individuals, have been involved in efforts overseas to conquer nobody, but to protect our allies and even people we don't know who aren't our allies. And you can disagree with a particular war, a particular battle, that's fine. But we're a great people. We have a great military. We're a great country. And it makes me sick to my stomach to see what Obama's doing to all of it. And his parade of leftists and failed theoreticians who he puts in these high positions. And Secretary Rumsfeld had particular disdain, as you could hear, for Hillary Clinton as well as John Kerry, not to mention Obama. And he's right. Hillsdale College. Now, Hillsdale College is the authority when it comes to teaching the Constitution. And now they have a new, free, online course. It's a brand new Constitution 101 course taking place right now. And I know tens of thousands of you have taken this terrific free online course and other courses Hillsdale College provides as part of their mission to help all Americans pursue truth and defend liberty. Even if you took their original Constitution 101 class, you need to take this new version. It's complete with great visuals, a message board where you can ask questions of the professors, and, of course, terrific lectures on the Constitution. These sessions are released weekly, but once they're out, you can watch them whenever you want at your own pace. But you need to sign up, and it's free. So let me encourage you to do it right now. Go to levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. This free 10-week online course explains both the meaning and history of the Constitution and what it all means for you. So sign up now at levinforhillsdale.com. That's levinforhillsdale.com.
Mark Levin.
Well, our Lib Media, a.k.a. our Lib Media, is circling the wagons around Obama, protecting him from criticism. We know this because David Ignatius. No, that's not an inner thigh rash, Ignatius. Oh, I have an Ignatius. Gee willikers. No. That's a long-time opinion writer at the Washington Compost. And Robert Gates tells Republicans to cut back on criticizing Obama's Ukraine policy, which I guess was also Robert Gates' Ukraine policy, since he was the Secretary of Defense, at least during part of it. Okay, so we won't, okay, we'll be quiet then. Yes, we won't criticize him. Notice, ladies and gentlemen, our criticism is words. We're not taking to the streets. We're not burning tires. right? We're not chaining ourselves to the White House fence. That's what the left does. No, we're voicing our opinion. Shh. No. No, don't criticize Obama. Gates said, I think considerable care needs to be taken in terms of what is said so that the rhetoric doesn't threaten what policy can't deliver. He said, Putin holds most of the high... Let me educate you, Mr. Gates. I was never a big fan of yours. I know you wrote that book, and every conservative grabbed on to you in the book in order to use it to attack Obama, and then you took steps back and you defended Obama. You're quite nimble, sir. Your principles appear to be quite negotiable. I've never been a fan. But maybe your record needs to be looked upon a little bit more thoroughly. Yes, maybe so. But the fact of the matter is, we criticize Obama because he deserves it. Because what he's doing to our military, our national security structure, also the abuses with the NSA and so forth, he needs to be called out. We live in what's called, what's left of it, a republic, Mr. Gates. And what you should have done, sir, is rather than taking orders that you disagreed with, fundamentally, that you thought were harmful to the Defense Department, you should have resigned in protest. But you didn't. You waited till after the fact to write it in a book. I'm still waiting for some general or some admiral to resign in protest over this president and what he's doing to the Pentagon. Obama's doing more to our defense system, more damage than Putin or Red China or anybody else for that matter. So no, I won't keep my mouth shut. Maybe you ought to speak up when he's cutting benefits, well-earned benefits, for combat vets. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is Hour 2. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Let me add to the first hour this. I am very troubled by many of the positions John McCain takes on domestic and foreign policy. And same with his sidekick, Lindsey Graham, for you folks in South Carolina. He urged us to intervene in Egypt. He was wrong. He urged us to intervene in Libya. He was wrong. He's urged us to intervene in Syria now. He's wrong. I mean, how many battles can a nation take on? Is there some world war going on? So you don't have to be an interventionist. And if you're not an interventionist, it doesn't mean you're an isolationist. And if you're not a pacifist or an isolationist, it doesn't mean you're an interventionist or a neocon either. That is superficial BS. Iran is an issue that matters to this country because they seek to get nukes and they seek to get missile systems that can deliver those nukes. They've killed American soldiers. They seek to spread their terrorism and have internationally. And they directly threaten one of our allies, but truthfully, more than one of our allies. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and so forth. And I'm no fan of Saudi Arabia. Please don't get me wrong. I'm just making a point. So our foreign policy doctrine should be whatever is in the best interest of the United States of America. Here again, this is what I find offensive when people try to describe what we do and who we are with some KGB dictator who has his own plans. We're nothing like him. Nothing. But John McCain really doesn't have a foreign policy either. Because intervening here and there, intervening everywhere, that's not a foreign policy. That's nuts. Now, part of this is also the problem I had with the Bush administration and the so-called democracy project. Yes, I supported the war in Iraq and still supported what we did. And same with Afghanistan, given what happened on 9/11. And I don't think we did enough to deal with Iran. But this isn't about a democracy project where you try to project or superimpose on these throwback societies loosely speaking, little d democracy. The rule of law means nothing. So it was absurd. And what we have in so much of the rest of the world, particularly in the Middle East now, are bigger problems than we had before. But I'm just saying, because this audience, we have thinking people in this audience, you don't embrace one doctrine or another that, well, I'm an isolationist, well, I'm an interventionist, well, I'm a pacifist, well, who cares what you are? What does that have to do with anything? If we think there's a threat to this country or an ally, and we need to address it before the threat actually metastasizes, then we deal with it. If we are attacked, we deal with it. If there are forces arraying on the horizon, we deal with it. If we intercept communications that terrorists or a terrorist state is planning to do something, we deal with it. So to say I'm a pacifist or I'm not an interventionist, this is just idiotic. But I have serious problems with the McCain-Lindsey Graham mentality too, which seems to be to intervene everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, no society can do that and last forever. Certainly not ours. There's not enough will among the people. There's not enough resources. It's just not our job. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be a world leader, if not the world leader. But there's many ways to do it. There are carrots and there are sticks. And you sure as hell don't do it by bashing your own country when you're traveling the world upon your election. And you sure as hell don't do it by weakening your own country from within, economically, militarily, its sovereignty, that is, securing its borders. And you sure as hell don't adopt the redistribution notions of the Marxists. So I just wanted to make that clear, because McCain is bouncing around everywhere. He doesn't speak for me. Now, he may speak for me here and there where I may agree with him, but as a general rule, and keep in mind, he was always at odds with Rumsfeld, too. But honest to God, I don't know what the hell he's thinking. I don't know what his principled foreign policy is, or his little goofball sidekick, Lindsey Graham, who I hope is defeated in a primary, but who knows. All right, we have to hit a few other issues. There's a hell of a lot going on, including, while the Ukraine-Russian matter is going on, Obama took another imperial step. From the Hill newspaper, this happened last evening. The Obama administration is set to announce another major delay in implementing the Affordable Care Act, the Unaffordable Care Act, easing election pressure on Democrats. You see, that's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. Not your your health and well-being, or that of your family. Not whether you can afford your policy. Not whether you have access to quality health care. It's whether we can push things ahead of the cycle so Democrats can get elected. So they're not to be held account for the monstrosity that they created. Is that it? Is that it? So the poison that is Obamacare doesn't seep enough into society among enough citizens and voters until it's too late. Is that what we mean by representative government? Ladies and gentlemen, This president is a fraud. If he loves Obamacare so much, stand behind it. Defend every last damn word of it. Institute it now. But he won't. He's trying to rule you. He's trying to lord over you. He's deceiving you, as he always does. Obamacare has been a lie from day one. Big lies and small lies, but lies to everyone. It's just, as early as this week, according to two sources, the White House will announce a new directive, a new fatwa, allowing insurers to continuing offer health plans that do not meet Obamacare's minimum coverage requirements. How the hell is an insurance company supposed to plan anything? As a matter of fact, that Rahm Emanuel's brother, what the hell is his name, Ezekiel? Has a family ever done more damage to a country than that one? Oh, yes, there are actually, but they're certainly among the top. Ezekiel Emanuel. He's written a piece saying the end of insurance companies is near. They want to break them. You can't run a multi-billion-dollar insurance company, which is trying to keep track of policies and whose actuaries and others are trying to figure out what the hell's going on, when you have a president who in many ways rules like Putin. Just makes a decision and institutes it. Putin at least goes to his phony parliament. This president doesn't go to our Congress. He just does it himself. Prolonging the keep your plan fix will avoid another wave of health policy cancellations otherwise expected this fall. So you're going to have your policies canceled, many of you, after the election. And the Democrats are going to run for office saying, we said you could keep your policy if you wanted to. They're going to lie through their teeth to you. The White House, goes the article, is intent on protecting its allies in the Senate, where Democrats face a battle to keep control of the chamber. I don't see how they could have a bunch of these announcements going on in September, one consultant in the health insurance industry said. Not when they're trying to defend the Senate and keep their losses at a minimum in the House. This is not something to have out there right before the election. I want you to step back and think about this for a minute. This all-consuming Obamacare that's sucking the life out of our economy, our financial system, out of your wallets and bank accounts. You hate it. And they know you hate it. And so when the hammer drops and tens of millions more lose their policies, they want to make sure it doesn't happen in September. They want to push it past November. This is Obama. He thinks he's clever. The White House and the Department of Health and Human Services both said they had no updates to announce. That's right. I expect they'll do it Friday night. Lawlessness. Contempt for the American people. It's just endless. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Yellow. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I've got more, but before I do that, we have some breaking news from our friends at the Orlando Sentinel. You know this lowlife, this Alan Grayson? Does it get any lower than that jerk? He lost the seat and then he won it again, and he's in Congress voting on your future. And you know this war on women thing that the Democrats always talk about? You know, the party of Ted Kennedy and Chappaquiddick, the party of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, the party of John Edwards. May I go on? Of course, but I won't. Well, it's now the party of Alan Grayson. A judge has granted a temporary protective injunction against U.S. Representative Alan Grayson after his wife filed paperwork accusing the Orlando congressman of shoving and injuring her during an incident this past weekend. And by the way, I don't cavil here. I don't take any great pleasure in somebody else's problems. But I'm sick and tired of this phony, the Republicans' war on women. I hope at least she got free contraceptives, because apparently that's the number one issue. Lolita Grayson, L-O-L-A, Lolita. Lolita Grayson's petition for the injunction dated Monday says her husband pushed her against a door, causing her to fall to the ground during a confrontation Saturday at their home on Oak Park Road near Windermere. In a statement, Alan Grayson's press secretary, Lauren Dunny, wrote that the allegations, quote, are absolutely false, completely unfounded, clearly designed to vilify and harm Congressman Grayson. Congressman Grayson firmly denies Ms. Grayson's frivolous accusations, the statement says. The incident comes just less than 2 months after Lolita Grayson filed a divorce petition stating that their marriage of nearly 24 years was irretrievably broken. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know who's telling the truth here. They both can't be. But I know from past experience, if you're a Republican, guilty as charged. Check that. Guilty as accused. So the truth is, it is the Democrats who have a war on women. They want them to abort. They want them to use contraceptives. Yes. And so here we have it. Asked about the incident, Orange County Sheriff's Officer Captain Angelo Nieves said in a written response, the agency is currently conducting a domestic violence investigation, which is open and active at this point. A heavily redacted Sheriff's Office document released Tuesday identified Lolita Grayson as the victim in the incident and listed the offense under investigation as domestic violence batteries. But Grayson was not arrested. So, again, I don't know who's telling the truth, but does that matter? No, it doesn't matter, because the liberal Democrat mindset is the guy is guilty. Case closed. I don't know if Lolita is telling the truth or Alan is telling the truth. Back to Obama, ladies and gentlemen. He's at Powell Elementary School in Washington, D.C. today, promoting his socialist/Marxist budget, of course, which would take money from the rich and give it to the poor. Cut one, go.
The budget I sent Congress this morning lays out how we'll implement this agenda in a balanced and responsible way. It's a roadmap for creating jobs with good wages and expanding opportunity for all Americans.
Stop. How many more times do we have to listen to this guy drone on about how he's going to create good paying jobs, good wages, expand opportunity, when he's the king of destroying jobs and wealth and opportunity? I'm serious about this. Are we 5-6 years into this? I don't know. The fog of Marxism has me confused. Go ahead.
And at a time when our deficit's been cut in half.
Stop. I am the truth detector. Folks, our deficit's been cut in half from $1.4 trillion to about $700 billion. Give or take. It's like the 5th or 6th highest annual deficit in American history. No former president has ever had a deficit like that. So what he's saying is, look, I ran up the bill by $1.4 trillion, and now we're down to $700 billion. Look what I've done. I've cut it. And, of course, he's cut nothing. We had a massive tax increase last year. And the budget numbers show that after about 2 years of this, it shoots back up the deficit, the annual deficit. Go ahead.
It allows us to meet our obligations to future generations without leaving them a mountain of debt.
Stop. Liar. A mountain of debt? That's you. That's your legacy. A mountain of debt that's going to smother our children and our grandchildren. I'm not done. I'll be right back.
Constitution man, Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
All right, I want you to hear this clip again because the key statement is at the very end. Cut one, go.
The budget I sent Congress this morning lays out how we'll implement this agenda in a balanced and responsible way. It's a roadmap for creating jobs with good wages and expanding opportunity for all Americans. And at a time when our deficit's been cut in half, it allows us to meet our obligations to future generations without leaving them a mountain of debt. This budget adheres to the spending levels that both parties in both houses of Congress already agreed to.
Read faster.
But it also builds on that progress with what we're calling an Opportunity, Growth, and Security Initiative.
Stop. Oh, wow. So soon we'll see all these liberals with their little cars with new bumper stickers saying Opportunity, Growth, and Security Initiative, or OGSI. And no doubt the program will work through the IRSS because Obama likes the IRSS. Opportunity, Growth, and Security Initiative. How cool is that, folks? I don't know. When it comes to opportunity, growth, and security, I always think of Obama and the left, don't you? Wow. A new bumper sticker. Just think. You ever been behind one of those cars, Coexist, that has all the, the symbols for the various religions, Mr. Producer? Coexist? Yes, it's usually somebody with long hair hasn't showered for about 12 days, driving their little Fiat or their smart car. And by the way, the smart car, to me, looks pretty damn stupid. Who wants to drive around in an orange juice can? But I digress. Go.
In our economic priorities in a smart way that is fully paid for by making smart spending cuts and closing tax loopholes that right now only benefit the well-off and the well-connected.
Oh, those tax loopholes that only benefit the well-off. You know what most of those quote-unquote tax loopholes are, ladies and gentlemen? It's called pensions. And Obama thinks that people who are super, super rich, like anyone who earns over $183,000 a year, or any couple that earns over $250,000 a year, well, they should be limited on what they can contribute to their own private pension plans. This is what he means when he's reading quickly his teleprompter. Redistribute wealth, inequality, stick it to the rich. Anyway, $4 trillion budget. What else did he say today when the Russians are on the move and he's at the Powell Elementary School? Cut two, go.
Right now our tax system provides benefits to wealthy individuals who save.
Stop. Benefits to wealthy individuals who save. I'm trying to think to myself, well, I am wealthy, but what's he talking about? I don't get any benefits for saving. What benefits is the man talking about? I have no idea. Am I not allowed to save? And what happens when a wealthy person saves? Do they put the money in a cigar box and bury it in the backyard? No. Do they put it in their mattress? No. Do they wallpaper their bedroom with it? No. What do they do with it? They, what we call, invest it. Even if you just put it in a savings account, that money's then available for what? For loans to other people. This is what we call capitalism. So now he used to trash, jets. He used to trash big cars. Now, these wealthy people, they save. What the hell? They shouldn't be able to save. We've got a big government to fund here. Let's start this from the beginning, Mr. Producer, because I want the absolute genius of this president to be spread nationwide, because I am certain most in this audience were not at Powell Elementary School listening to this Marxist claptrap. Go.
Right now our tax system provides benefits to wealthy individuals who save, even after they've amassed multi-million-dollar retirement accounts.
Stop. First of all, why is it any of Obama's business who has amassed anything? He ought to get up behind that microphone and say every day, I've become a multi-millionaire as a result of becoming a U.S. Senator and President. Now, let's talk about inequality. All right, go ahead.
By closing that loophole, we can help create jobs and grow the...
What loophole? What loophole is he talking about? A deduction that everybody in the country can take? I don't know what loophole he's... It's not a loophole. I have an idea. Why doesn't Obama tell us what we're allowed to earn? Just so we know. What is it? Is it 50 grand? Is it 43 grand? What is it? Is it 78 grand? 112 grand for two people? He should tell us what we're allowed to keep, because apparently Obama knows. Go ahead.
And expand opportunity without adding
a dime.
All right,
shut up. I can't take it. I really can't take it. This guy is illiterate economically and in most other things that involve the presidency, but I'm focused on this right now. And all I have to hear, and you too, is this Marxist claptrap. Hey, how dare you call him a Marxist? Oh, well, what am I supposed to call him? Where does this come from, if not that? Well, we don't say that, in polite company. Why are you calling names? Oh, is Marxism a name? It seems to me if you practice it, you ought to be proud of it. Meanwhile, still at Powell. And why is he at Powell Elementary School? What is it? 7-year-olds listening to this crap? He was speaking from a kindergarten classroom. Well, you know what? The more I think about it, that's totally appropriate. Yes, he's in a kindergarten classroom speaking. Perfect. Cut 3, go.
This budget will also continue to put our fiscal house in order over the long term.
No, it won't.
Not by putting the burden on folks who can least afford it, but by reforming our tax code and our immigration system.
I stop. Whoa. Notice how he slipped that little one in there? So we're going to reform our immigration system through the tax code? Is that it? Like we're going to reform the First Amendment through the tax code when it comes to free speech and Tea Party organizations? Just listen to the irrationality here. We're going to reform our tax code. He's not reforming anything. And our immigration system. Go ahead.
And building on the progress that we've made to reduce health care costs under the Affordable Care Act.
Wow, he sure has. He has slashed costs under the Affordable Care Act, ladies and gentlemen. Hasn't he? Does he believe his own BS here? I wish I could say it. If this were just purely satellite, I could say it. Does he really believe his own bull? I wonder, is he so delusional that he believes this stuff, or he's just such an ideologue that you keep telling the big lie? And does it matter? Probably not. All right, there's more here, but I'm going to protect you from the president's propaganda and his serial deceit. I'm going to protect you. I'm not going to play any more of it. Let's take some more calls, shall we? Yes, we can. Let us go to Randy, Wichita, Kansas, the great KNSS. Go.
Professor Levin, it's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Your 5 books are just absolutely great. I've learned so much, and you've given us so much guidance and direction. There are so many of us who are sick of the lies, the empty rhetoric, the pompousness of this president and his administration, as well as Senator McCain and Lindsey Graham. It doesn't matter, regardless of party. And, this president, he goes after the very Constitution, the very people who made this country great and successful. And then when we have to stand up to somebody like Putin, all we're left with is empty rhetoric that nobody pays any attention to. It's just empty words. It's just so frustrating, and that's why your book, The Liberty Amendments, is so critical, that it gives us a pathway to start taking back our government for we the people, and we very much appreciate that, sir.
Well, you're very, very kind, my friend. I appreciate it. And one day, I think this will be fully embraced, because it's obvious that the federal government is not going to reverse course. They've designed this Rube Goldberg-like monstrosity, and they have no intention of unraveling it. And some of the folks who want to unravel it, well, they're not going to be able to unravel it, because it's going to be too far gone. So thank you for your call, my friend. Got a lot of issues on the table. God bless you. So let's go to Tanya, Central Florida, on the Mark Levin app. Go.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. How are you today? I'm a little
very
nervous.
well, thank you.
I'm very nervous.
Well, listen to me. Relax, but speak right into the mouthpiece so I can hear you.
All right. I was listening to President Putin earlier today. Actually, I speak Russian and Ukrainian, and I was listening to him in Russian, what he was actually saying, and I was just shocked that nobody in America had translated the last phrase he said when he was asked about the bloodshed in Ukraine. What he actually said about women and children was that the Russian army is going to stand behind women and children, and he would look at the Ukrainian army shooting at their own women and children. And I don't know, I mean...
Whoa. Let me just underscore... Hold on now. Let me underscore this. So he said in Russian that his military is going to stand behind the Ukrainian women and children, and then we'll watch as the Ukraine... Hold on now, listen. Then we'll watch as the Ukrainian army shoots them?
Yes, and he would like to see who would give an order to shoot their own women and children. I don't know if that's normal or not, but I cannot believe any world would allow women and children to be used as a living shield for any army.
No, it's not normal. I don't know if they'll do it, but no, that's not normal. Could be hubris, but who knows? This guy's capable of a lot.
That is exactly how it was.
And are you Ukrainian? I'm assuming you are, yes or no?
I am half Russian, half Ukrainian. I speak both languages and obviously speak English. And I spoke to a lot of people back home, and everybody's in shock. We don't know what to take of that, but nobody should be allowed to use women and children as shields. That's not...
Well, it's not a question of allowed to use women and children as shields. And in history, unfortunately, that and worse has happened. But it is important to know the mentality that, in fact, if he said it, and you said he did say it, that's pretty harsh stuff. Now, where in the Ukraine are you from exactly?
I'm from the central Ukraine. I can read you word for word what he said.
No, you don't need to. You just told me what he said. I will tell you that I am also Russian and Ukrainian. I don't know what percentage of what. And then I found out I'm part Finnish. What the hell is that, Tanya?
Well,
you know any good Finnish jokes? Neither do I. No. Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I do. Well, I lived a long time in Europe, but...
All right. Well, Tanya, listen, that was a very good call. I appreciate it. And trust me, I'm not one of these useful idiots who believes Putin is a relatively good guy, and this is just part of Russia's manifest destiny. All right, you take care of yourself. Let's continue, shall we? Yes. LifeLock. Scammers are hard at work with a tried-and-true telephone scam, the shut-off swindle. You know what the shut-off swindle is? They pose as utility workers and threaten to shut off your service claiming unpaid bills. Their goal, to get your personally identifiable information to commit identity theft. And they'll encourage you to settle the invoice by providing account details, your name, address, the last 4 digits of your Social Security number, and a credit card number. Don't ever give that stuff to strangers or over the phone. Identity thieves are shrewd, and they're targeting your checking and savings accounts. They're after your cash. They're after your retirement. I trust LifeLock Ultimate to help protect my identity and my bank accounts from takeover fraud, and I've also gotten it for my parents. Make sure LifeLock services protect you and your bank accounts. Become a member today. Visit lifelock.com/Levin. That's /LEVIN. And get my special 10% discount. Or just call and use promo code Levin and again get the 10% discount. Here's the number. 800-457-LOCK. 800-457-LOCK. That's 800-457-LOCK. Network doesn't cover all transactions, and the scope may vary.
Mark Levin.
Go to Cheryl, Orange County, California. Hello, Cheryl.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Last time I talked to you, I had just gotten a puppy because you had inspired me to get a puppy.
Oh, really? Remind me, what kind?
A Labradoodle.
Oh, they're beautiful.
She's so sweet. We're going to get another one.
Oh, that's just great.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to you. I about fell off the chair when you were talking about Obama and retirement plans. It's the most... My husband works in that industry for a very reputable free market company, I might add.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
It's just... the very thing that even someone that makes minimum wage can do, put money in a 401k. You can work at Starbucks and have a 401k. But this leads me back to you talking about...
Let me just slow you down a second.
Yeah.
If you start putting money into a 401k or an IRA for 40 years, you can actually amass a couple of $1 million.
Isn't it interesting how compounding works?
You don't have to be a really, really rich person to do that over time. And yet, look how he talks. Let me tell you, I've been saying this for years. They have their sights on our private pension plans. First, they're going to talk about, well, these rich people and their loopholes, and then they're going to just grab them and give you some kind of a phony program in their place. Go right ahead.
In your voice that that is just about the very thing we try to teach our kids to save for the future. The man is totally delusional. This goes back to another thing you had said. It was a while ago. I don't know if you had said it or it was somebody, you had talked to someone who told you.
Well, if it was brilliant, I'm sure I did, but go right ahead.
About a Frontline special on PBS about he wants to not let investment management firms make any fees whatsoever for managing the money.
Right. And Frontline's a leftist show, although I like their music.
What's that?
Yeah. Although I like their music.
Oh, yeah, well.
But, yes, that's correct. This guy wants to control everything. It's like the student loan program, the credit card programs, mortgages. Now he wants to get into pensions. Like I said the other day on my friend Imus's show, and I've said it before, everything this guy touches turns to crap.
Oh, there's no two ways about that. But
all right.
This really is a frightening, and I don't think people get it because they think it's such an out there, obscure thing. But it's going to affect even the kid that works in Starbucks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is, and I think the Republicans at this point, they don't want to lead on anything. They need to block everything. So if they're not going to lead on anything, they need to block everything. Because this guy, his middle name is Damage. And I've said before, he's a one-man wrecking ball, and that's exactly what he is. Ken, Colorado Springs, the great KVOR. Quickly, go.
Mark, we can do this in one stroke victory and make Sun Tzu proud.
Yeah.
Let's counter the morons' opportunity, growth, and security with one stroke. You pump oil, and you destroy the price at $80, $85 a barrel for Russian oil. They go bankrupt. You give opportunity for 40,000 people employed immediately on the pipeline. The residuals come later. You grow your economy and your national security.
Thank you for your call, Ken. You're right on. Ladies and gentlemen, with this one resource, broadly speaking, oil, natural gas, so forth, it would have an enormous impact not only on our own economy, because apparently we have so much of it, which they told us 5 years ago we were running out of it, remember? So much for the geniuses in the government and their cheerleaders in the media. That said, do you know how it would change the Middle East for the good? No more threats, no more blackmail. Do you know how it would, in fact, change Russia and its environs? That's right, Western Europe wouldn't have to buckle, and certainly Eastern Europe wouldn't have to buckle. But we have one big problem. Obama. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is the all-powerful Hour 3. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. We have a terrific guest this hour. And she has things to say that I've never heard before, and they're very compelling. But I'll get to that in a moment. Before we do, there's a few other things I want to hit. Will the Senate confirm cop killer advocate, Obama nominee for the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, Debo Adegbile? And if I mispronounced his name, who cares? I'm sure I did. Adegbile. You try it 5 times. Now, he was voted out of the Senate Judiciary Committee along party lines. The Democrats supported the cop killer advocate, 10 of them, and the Republicans opposed the cop killer advocate, 8 of them. But over the weekend, Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania came out of the Witness Protection Program. I forgot what he looked like. I certainly don't remember what he sounds like. And he announced that he will be voting against him. I will not vote to confirm the nominee. Now, as you may recall, the other dictator, Harry Reid, has changed the Senate filibuster rules when it comes to such nominees. So they don't need 60 votes anymore to overcome the filibuster rule. They just need 51. People are wondering, will they get it? Mark Pryor of Arkansas, Kay Hagan of North Carolina, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, John Walsh and John Tester of Montana, Mark Begich of Alaska, Mary Landrieu of Louisiana. Will they or won't they? As you folks know, this has been, well, a cause of some sorts with me. And so I've been keeping an eye on it. Because this nominee, decades after the cop killer was convicted, and his conviction was really without question, absolutely without question. But of course, because he was a cop killer, he became this Abu Jamal. That wasn't his original name, but who cares? He became a big cause celeb for Hollywood, because Hollywood has nothing else to do. But in any event, I'm not going to keep kicking this, but we'll keep an eye on the vote. But you have to wonder, here we have a president of the United States. Out of all the people in the country he could have chosen to head the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, he picks this guy. He worked at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And the fact that the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was trying to get this murderer off is another disgrace. Is this what the NAACP has become? Apparently so. I know, it's like a bad nightmare, isn't it? It's like a bad dream, a nightmare, we should say, isn't it? This whole damn administration, the nominees, the foreign policy, the domestic policy, it's like it can't get worse, and it gets worse. The GOP is accused of environmental racism. Really? The hell is that? Are we guilty of something? I don't even know what that is. House Republicans are being accused of environmental racism by an environmental group that argues GOP efforts to reform decades-old chemical laws would disproportionately harm minority groups, writes The Hill. Oh, well, that's why they're doing it, to harm minorities. Sick. At issue is draft legislation backed by Representative John Shimkus, Republican, Illinois, that would require the EPA to focus on chemicals that pose the greatest risk to the public in enforcing environmental protections. Well, I don't know, Mr. Producer. That sounds racist to me. Doesn't it to you? Oh, yes, absolutely. Shimkus argues his bill would free up resources to focus on the most dangerous chemical threats. But the the radical kook fringe Environmental Justice Health Alliance says it would end up hurting minority groups by moving resources away from policing the threats in their neighborhoods. That, in turn, would increase the risk that they could develop cancer, asthma, child leukemia, infertility, birth defects, among other health problems. And in their press release, the group said the bill would promote what it called environmental racism. This bill harms communities of color disproportionately, Michelle Roberts, co-coordinator of the Environmental Justice Health Alliance, said in an interview. Most of these chemicals are either manufactured, stored in, or disposed of in primarily communities of color. Well, that's the deal, see. Whoever is storing this stuff in communities of color, they're the racists. Shouldn't we track them down? Now, keep in mind all that Shimkus is doing. He issued or has prepared draft legislation that would require the EPA to focus on chemicals that pose the greatest risk to the public in enforcing environmental protections. And now he's an environmental racist. Daniel Rosenberg, an attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council. I love the names they give themselves. They're so flowery. Oh, the National Resources Defense Council. Not the radical left-wing Red Kook Council. Last week called the draft bill a disappointment and said it would do more harm than good. Well, folks hurting from chemicals are also calling this the poison pill bill. Oh, they're coming up with all, it's a poison pill bill, environmental racism. I told you. The Reds have moved into the Green movement. They've taken it over. And that's what we're dealing with. The Reds in the Green movement. Environmental racism, that's a new one. Now, when we return from the break, I have a great guest. This is her first interview on her brand new book. Now, stay with me. This is somebody I wanted to talk to, who I asked to come on the program to talk about this book. Jew or Gentile or everything in between or nothing. I think this will really fascinate you. It's a very different book. It's called The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for the peace in the Middle East. Now, I was honored by Caroline Glick to read a copy of this book before it was a book. And I get a lot of requests like this. And typically, I'm not that interested in having the author on, but I was very interested in having her on. And this is the first on-air interview she's going to do. And I think you're going to want to hear this. As I say, regardless of who you are, what your background is, your religion is, I think this is going to be very interesting to you. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is Caroline Glick, and she is a senior contributing editor to the Jerusalem Post, and she's written what will be a provocative book. But if people really read it and think about it, it does provide a course for the Middle East. The title of the book is The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East. Caroline, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on your show this evening.
Well, it is a great pleasure. And by the way, folks, the book is linked up on my social sites and will be on my website, Mark Levin Show, Facebook, Mark Levin Show, Twitter. Caroline Glick, you're saying, wait a minute, forget about this two-state solution. Now, I'm going to ask you a question and break it down because it's going to take a little bit of time. This two-state solution that they keep talking about, I have just viscerally opposed it, or really have looked at history and said, what the hell is this? But they keep proposing it. Why is this doomed to fail?
It's doomed to fail because the Palestinians don't want it. They don't want Israel. And that two-state solution that everybody knows is the only way forward involves Israel existing, and the Palestinians reject that, and therefore they never will accept it. They never have. They could have had this solution since 1937, and ever since then they could have had it at any time. They don't have it because they don't want it, and that's why it will never be.
How many times has a two-state solution in one form or another been proposed?
Well, the United States has proposed it in one form or another 9 times since 1970. And over the years previous to that, it had been proposed another dozen times.
And what exactly is a two-state solution? The way I see it, we're already talking about a three-state solution. You've got the Gaza, they want another chunk, plus Israel. Isn't that 3 states? But what is this two-state solution?
Well, it's actually a 4-state solution because Jordan is overwhelmingly Palestinian. Gaza is a sovereign Palestinian state, and then there's Israel, and now they want to carve out of Israel yet a third Palestinian state in the West Bank. So that would be a 4-state solution, actually.
Mm-hmm. But these two-state solutions, like your book, the timing of your book is like perfect because Netanyahu's been at the White House and Obama had a pretty damn outrageous interview with some guy named Jeffrey Goldberg, and he went on about how he's going to really stick it to the Israelis to come up and agree to this two-state solution of sorts, correct?
That's right, and what's crazy is that the Israelis have always agreed to it. I mean, we've agreed to it since 1937, and before there was an Israel. And the Palestinians always say no, and then Israel always gets blamed because the Palestinians keep saying no. It's a little bit crazy, isn't it?
Okay. Now, if not a so-called two-state solution, what is the solution?
Well, the solution is for Israel to apply its laws, its sovereignty to the West Bank, and provide civil rights, permanent residency status with a path towards citizenship for all the Palestinians who live there, and just govern the areas as the rest of sovereign Israel is governed.
Now, wait a minute. This is pretty big. What you're suggesting here, and I've never heard it before, is, okay, all the Palestinians that live in the West Bank essentially will at some point become Israeli citizens.
They want to. Yeah, I mean.
Well, what about the population numbers? I've heard it over and over again. The demographics that Israel will cease to become cease to remain a Jewish state.
Right. So that was a fiction that was concocted in 1997 by the PLO. They published a census where they said that by 2015 Arabs were going to outnumber Jews west of the Jordan River. The problem with that census is that it was completely fraudulent. They inflated the Palestinian base population by 50%, and then by 1.34 million people. It'd be the equivalent of the U.S. Census Bureau inflating the population of the United States by 160 million people. And then after they did that, they then said that the Palestinians have a birth rate that is completely out of whack with the number of children they're actually having, and that they're going to have massive immigration when what they've been doing is hemorrhaging immigrants since 1994. So it's all a lie, and yet, we hear time after time, Obama just said it again in that interview you mentioned with Jeff Goldberg, that Israel is going to be outnumbered, Jews are going to be outnumbered by Arabs in short order, and therefore Israel's going to have to stop being a democracy if it wants to continue to be a Jewish state, and then what's going to happen to it. It'll go the way of the apartheid regime in South Africa. But all of it is untrue. I mean, Jewish women in Israel are having more babies than the Palestinian women are. So it's just, on every level, it's just a lie.
So in this one-state solution, how many Palestinians would that include?
That would include about 1.6 million Palestinians added to Israel. So you would end up with about 3.2 million Arabs in Israel to 6.2 million Jews. So Jews would retain a 2/3 majority of the population. Again, it's okay.
And these folks would eventually participate in the democratic process, have representatives in the Knesset, and on and on and on. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that, in the first instance, they would be granted permanent residency rights, which means that they would be able to elect they would have rights that are identical to Israeli citizens in all aspects except participating in Knesset elections for the national legislature, but that if they apply for Israeli citizenship and they abide by the criterion for Israeli citizenship, then yes, they would also participate in Knesset elections. Absolutely.
This is really going to take time to set in to affect the mindset in Israel. Certainly in the United States, but in Israel itself, isn't it?
Well, no, that's the interesting thing is that Israelis have been hearing about the demographic lie was exposed for the first time in 2005 by a group of researchers from the United States and Israel who got together and just started counting heads, and they realized that the whole thing was a lie, and they published their findings in January of 2005. And over the intervening 9 years, the information that they brought has been verified and has and has really percolated throughout Israeli society. So Israelis have really begun to digest this, and already in the current Knesset session, you've had 2 bills put forward by Likud Knesset members calling for the application of Israeli law to various parts of the West Bank. And you have coalition partner, the Jewish Home Party, that is calling for applying Israeli law to either all of the areas or large swaths of the area. So this is a discussion that's being had in an intense manner in Israel today, but the information hasn't been brought before the American public or even to American policymakers, and as a consequence, it's not happening here. And so Americans are all surprised when they hear this, but this is actually the most active discussion that's really being had today, because Israelis understand, in 2000 we realized that the Palestinians weren't interested in peace, and then in 2005 we said, well, maybe we should just pick up our marbles and go home, and we left Gaza. We expelled all the Jews from Gaza, destroyed all of their communities, handed them over lock, stock, and barrel to the Palestinians, and then since then, they've shot 13,000 missiles at Israel from the areas that Israel vacated. So then we said, well, we can't do that either. So now what do we do? So the whole concept of partition, either by unilaterally leaving, just picking up and leaving, or negotiating peace, have been completely discredited and been shown to be fictions to the vast majority of Israelis. And now Israelis are looking for an alternative plan, and this is the policy that I put forward in my book.
Caroline Glick, we have to take a break, if we may, and I'm going to ask you when we come back, is this being discussed anywhere among the population of the United States? No. Actually, this is the first interview. It's the first I've heard of it, the first we've discussed it. Obviously, I've read your book. But what about the United States State Department? Is this idea something that's bouncing around there, and how are they going to react? When we come back, Caroline Glick, it's a great book, The Israeli Solution. I'll be right back.
The Mark Levin Show is tomorrow's morning show. You can reach Mark now at 877-381-3811.
I'm telling you, folks, this really is a compelling book. I'd never thought about this before, The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East. And I'm talking to its author, Caroline Glick, and she's telling us this is an active discussion in Israel. It's in no discussion in the United States that I'm aware of, except starting right now. Now, Caroline Glick, my question is the State Department aware of this, and what's their response?
I know that the U.S. Census Bureau has told the Israeli demographic researchers that they know that the Palestinian population figures that everybody is citing are completely inaccurate, but that for political reasons everybody is choosing to pretend that that isn't the case. It's very convenient to maintain faith with a two-state plan, because then you're saying that the whole problems, all the problems in the Middle East, all the problems in the Arab world will just go away in a poof of smoke the minute that Israel surrenders its capital city and its strategic and historic heartland to Palestinian terrorists. Everything will be fine. And then the only side that needs to be pressured in any way, the only side you have to be concerned with is Israel. And we saw that with Obama when he was putting all of the blame for impasses and negotiations on Israel, even though the Palestinians keep rejecting all of his proposals. So he doesn't need to think about them. He doesn't need to think about anything. All he can do is concentrate all of his efforts on pressuring Israel, and eventually maybe he'll succeed, and then everything will be wonderful.
I'm curious, and you do write about this in your book, what is the response of the Palestinian leaders, so-called?
Look, the Palestinian leadership to this plan, I assume that they won't like it, right? Because it says, you guys are a bunch of phonies. You pretend that you want peace with Israel, and you get billions and billions of dollars in foreign aid from the United States and Europe, which you then put into your pockets and steal from your people. You rule them with an iron boot just constantly repressing them and stealing their property and torturing them. And you get away with it because you're fighting Israel. And what we're saying is, no, the game's over. You're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to take it anymore. And you know what? The Palestinians don't deserve to be persecuted in this way. And we're going to stop it. So I can't imagine that they'd be particularly happy about it.
And yet they have a powerful voice in our State Department. Yeah. So that could be an issue, couldn't it?
Well, it could, but I think that, you know, it doesn't. You can continue on with this as long as you want to. It's never going to lead to peace because the Palestinians don't want peace. They don't want to live at peace with Israel. So, you know, the Americans continue to do this, but they do it at their own peril because when you blame your closest ally in the Middle East for everything bad in all of its neighbors' societies, the bad things of which they are the principal victims, you're not understanding the Middle East. You don't understand what you're dealing with. And the problems in the Middle East that the Americans have insistently ignored for over a generation now are very dangerous to the United States. They're extremely dangerous to the United States, not only as we saw in 9/11, but also as we saw in the Iraq War, where the Americans went in basically blind and didn't understand what they were getting into. If they hadn't been blinded by the two-state paradigm of blaming Israel all the time, then they would have recognized that what they were going to get into was almost exactly what Israel was dealing with in Lebanon for 18 years, and they would have put together a war plan that reflected reality. But they didn't do that because they didn't want to think about Israel as an ally. They wanted to think about Israel as synonymous with the peace process.
And the Europeans, how would they react, do you think?
Well, you know, the Europeans basically only have one unified foreign policy, and that unified foreign policy since 1974 of the Europeans has been hostility towards Israel. So I think that they would react poorly to this. I think, you know, they're already launching a trade war against Israel with limited economic sanctions that they instituted last summer, and they may very well want to escalate them, and they may very well escalate them because they don't have anything else that unifies them as any sort of political entity. But I think that you know, their response will be painful for Israel, but on the other hand, recognizing the hostility of Europe towards the Jewish state has led Israel's economic leadership to diversify as much as possible Israel's markets. And you see, as I discuss in my book, vastly expanding Israeli trade with Asian countries. And Israel also has another ace in the hole, which is that we've just discovered vast reserves of natural gas offshore, and Israel is going to become, it already is becoming an energy exporter, and that already is mitigating the impact of slowdowns in trade with Europe that aren't due actually to sanctions, but to the long-term recession in the European economy. So I think that Israel has a lot of chips that it's holding right now that will minimize the impact of a European response to such a plan by Israel. And obviously, if the United States were to support Israel, even passively, that the United States would also be able to block serious economic warfare on the part of Israel.
Let me remind people this is Caroline Glick. The book is The Israeli Solution: A One-State Plan for Peace in the Middle East. You know, give Americans who've never been to Israel, who think about it as sort of a distant situation over there, a sense of what it's like to live in Israel surrounded by so many enemies.
You know, Israel is one of the happiest places in the world. Israelis are some of the most optimistic people in the world, some of the most creative and innovative people in the world. I mean, it's just a joyful place. There are children all over the place. Israelis have the highest birth rate in the Western world by far. We're an outlier with 3 children per woman. And it's just a very alive, happening, exciting place. And it's the one place where we're ruled by the rule of law, where we care about everything from the environment to religious freedom and protect people's civil rights and enable entrepreneurs to push their ideas forward. Israel has one of the highest investments in R&D, governmental investments in R&D in the world. And it's just, today, Israel is just an exciting, happy, fun place to live. And yes, it's true, we're sitting in the shadow of volcanoes erupting all over the place. But as far as Israel is concerned, we are, in fact, an island of freedom and happiness and optimism. It's a wonderful
okay, but that said, I mean, you do have the Islamo-Nazi regime in Iran. Yep. It is a big country with a lot of people who are continually threatening to attack Israel. It's clear they're at breakneck speed trying to build their atomic bombs. It's also clear the United States, as in so many areas of the world, has been weak in responding to it. So I assume that's something the Israeli people are very, very concerned about. At least I would be.
We are very concerned about it, but there's sort of an unspoken social compact between the Israeli people and our leadership, which is that our leadership takes care of existential threats. And as concerned as Israelis are, we trust our leaders when they say that Iran isn't going to acquire nuclear weapons. And the United States may be making it more difficult for Israel to abide by that unspoken promise to the Israeli people, but I'm fairly certain that we can trust our leaders not to allow us to be destroyed by Iran or by anybody else.
All right. Well, I want you to know this book, The Israeli Solution, A One-State Plan for Peace in the Middle East, just came out today. It's hot off the presses by Caroline Glick. I read the whole thing. I read the whole thing about, 6-8 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to have you here, Caroline. It is a truly special book. I mean, the plan is new to me, and it'll be new to a vast majority of Americans who read it, and it makes enormous sense. That is, one state, the Palestinians are part of the state, they assimilate into the system, and that's the way you settle this, not this 2-state, 3-state, 4-state deal. And I think you're right. I think Abbas and these others, they'll resist it. I think Europe really has a hate-on for Israel. That's just me. But I think a strong American president who can see this, who can embrace it, would help promote this. And I want to thank you for writing what is truly an outstanding book.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I really think that the time has come for fresh thinking about this, and people have to understand there is an alternative out there. It is a better alternative. It is a safer alternative, and it is an alternative that is going to be better not only for Israel but for the United States.
All right, Caroline Glick, God bless you. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, take care. The book is The Israeli Solution by Caroline Glick, A One-State Plan for Peace in the Middle East. I think if you read it, you're going to be really impressed. Not 2 states, a one-state plan. It's on my social sites, Mark Levin Show, Facebook, Mark Levin Show, Twitter. You can go directly to Amazon. I'm sure any major bookstore will have it as well. And I think you'll be impressed with it. I know I was. LegalZoom, for some it's the first day they open the doors to their business. For others, when they get that first customer, or when they're making enough money to quit their day job. These are the moments when new business owners get to say, I did it. It's National Start Your Business Month. Did you know that? It's your moment to shine, and LegalZoom is ready to help you. Start your LLC, incorporate, or file your DBA. If you don't know what that is, you can find out at LegalZoom. LegalZoom received an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, so you know they'll get the job done right. And over the past 14 years, they've helped over 1 million business owners successfully get started. How about you? And this month is special because with your purchase, LegalZoom will give you a 3-month trial to the all-new QuickBooks, a better way to run your whole business. It's a $119 value for free. So act now. Enter Levin, Levin, in the referral box at checkout. That's Levin. Make today your new business moment. LegalZoom.com is ready to help make it happen. And LegalZoom provides self-help services and can connect you with the right attorney, but they're not a law firm. So go to LegalZoom, enter Levin, and remember, LegalZoom is turning business dreams into reality.
Mark Levin.
going to stop in at CPAC just for a brief time. Thursday morning, I'm going to be getting a wonderful award, free speech award from our friends at Breitbart.com and Citizens United. And I hope you'll join me, those of you who can. And I'll say just a few words, but I won't be hanging around very long. It's about 100-mile round trip, believe it or not, because they're holding it someplace in Maryland, I think. But CPAC itself didn't invite me. Breitbart and Citizens United, Steve Bannon and my buddy Dave Bossie, and I thank them very much. But more on that later. Steve, exit 53, I guess the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I guess you're past exit 53 at this point. How are you, sir?
Brother, I'm in West Virginia. I'm in Wheeling at the TA.
Wow.
Already.
That's you've been on hold a long time. I apologize.
Hey, any wait is worth waiting for you, the greatest one.
Jeez, thank you.
Hey.
Yes, sir. What's up?
A couple of your questions that you were asking earlier. Yeah. Why talk to 7-year-olds?
Why talk to 7-year-olds?
Yeah, when Obama did his little speech there.
Oh, why speak in a kindergarten? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, because they're young enough to believe the BS. They're not old enough to know any better. And Solowinski taught that you must brainwash the kids when they're young to win them over. But what I think they're doing in between this whole thing with the health care and the going after the retirements are connected. That MyCare, if you get rid of the insurance companies, people don't have something to invest into. They have to invest into MyCare. If there is no insurance companies, you can't repeal Obamacare, because then what are you going to do?
Well, you're right. There's no insurance companies, then the government becomes the insurer, which is the trick all along, to nationalize the whole damn thing. All right, Steve-O, thanks for waiting and thanks for calling, my friend. Al, Edgewater, Maryland. Not Al like Al, I stubbed my toe. Al like A-L, the caller. The great WMAL. And by the way, Al, did you know WMAL is named after you?
That sounds convenient. I'll see you tomorrow at CPAC, or Thursday at CPAC, probably.
Look forward to it.
Anyway, I just, by the way, Carolyn Glick is absolutely right, and I'll add one to it. I'm for the greater Israel. If there's ever, God forbid, another war, and they take territory, you got to continue taking it and never give it back.
Well, apparently Israel's not allowed to do that. Every other nation on the face of the earth, when they win a war after they've been attacked, they're able to do that. But apparently Israel's not. But go ahead, my friend.
All right. Well, anyway, Donald Rumsfeld had a roundabout way of maintaining a very important point, which is all of the homework that should have been done to the point that we are in the Crimea and everything else has been the previous 5 years. Well, the economy went into the toilet and everything went downhill. It's all connected, and guys like Obama and their party refuse to believe the interconnection between the health of a great nation's economy and the health of its national security. And
well, I happen to take a little different view. I happen to take the view that they are trying to drag us down economically and in terms of our foreign policy, because they don't view us as a great nation and a great people. They really don't. They view us as one nation among many, one people among many. Obama as much as said that. So that's what he's doing. And these idiots who voted for him, yes, you know, the clapping seals in the audience, they don't even understand what they're doing to themselves. Well, many of them do, but many of them don't.
Well, I have to agree with you. In actuality, I do think that Obama has a certain amount of contempt for this country, which is unrequited, and he's taking it out of us.
Well, you don't fundamentally transform a nation that you love, I can tell you that.
Exactly. But anyway, Rumsfeld had a great demonstration, and we no longer have the power to have the carrot or the stick. And besides that, we actually owe part of our national debt to the Soviet Union and China. And so we more China than Russia. Absolutely, more China than Russia.
All right, Al, got to roll. Hope to see you, my friend. Come up to me if you can, and take care of yourself. How much time do I have? Karen, San Fernando, California, on the Mark Levin app. Quickly, go.
your friend KK, and I just wanted to say after hearing Ms. Glick, I was so compelled to pick up the phone. Enough is enough. It's
How the hell did you get through so fast?
I know. Well, because I have
amazing.
that secret. I knew you were getting off with her. I did the timing just like you say.
Yes.
And I got in. I don't feel compelled to call all the time, as you know now.
No.
So
you agree with Caroline
Oh,
Glick?
my goodness. It's so overdue. It's like, we keep saying, what do you want us to do? And they keep saying, die.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, we don't want to die. So enough is enough. This is how it's going to be. We have to get on with our lives. You cannot constantly ask of Israel anymore. It's enough.
And by the way, what's the problem? She says bring them into the system, over time assimilate. Why would people oppose that? Well, the reason is because they like the Balkanization and they hate the Jews and they don't want Israel.
Exactly right. And any gay Palestinian is going to be so happy. Arab Israelis are happier than the average Palestinian. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be played.
In other words, they'll be protected.
Yeah.
All right, Karen, thank you, my friend. Take care of yourself. What a show, man. We've hit everything and anything, and we've hit it out of the park. You have, my beloved audience. Thank you. We'll be right back here tomorrow. It's only Tuesday. It's not even snowing where I am. I'm actually quite shocked. The polar vortex apparently isn't kicking up. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. I'll see you tomorrow, America. I'm Mark Levin.